Have you ever been talking to a beautiful woman and 10 minutes later you realize the conversation feels painfully average? You're being polite, you're asking questions, you're smiling, but there's no spark, no tension, no shift in energy, and you leave thinking, I did everything right, so why did it feel so flat? Let me ask you something deeper. What if the problem isn't the topic, but the emotional level you're operating on? Most men think flirting is about clever lines, or saying something bold, or being funny at the right time. It's not. Flirting is not about impressive words. It's about emotional proximity. How close can you move the emotional distance between you and her? Through the questions you ask? Because here's the truth, most men never learn. Small talk exchanges information. Flirting exchanges emotion. And the moment you understand that distinction, everything changes. Let me show you exactly how. Principle 1. Curiosity over comfort. Most conversations stay stuck on the surface because they feel safe there. What do? Where are you from? How was your weekend? These aren't bad questions. They're just external. They collect data, and data does not create attraction. Emotion does. There's a psychological mechanism called self-disclosure reciprocity. When someone shares something personal, the brain releases bonding chemicals, and unconsciously, they associate that feeling with the person who made it safe to open up. That means when she opens up to you, she feels closer to you. Not because you impressed her, but because you created the space. Now, here's where most guys miss it. They ask about external facts instead of internal experiences. External question, what do you do for work? Internal question, what part of your day actually makes you excited to wake up? Do you feel the difference? One gathers information, the other gathers emotion. External question, where did you grow up? Internal question, what's something about where you grew up that shaped how you see the world? Now she has to pause, she has to think, she has to go inward. And when someone goes inward while looking at you, something subtle happens. The connection deepens. Let me tell you a quick story. I once coached a guy who kept getting "you're really nice" energy from women. He was stuck in interview mode. He'd ask all the logical questions. He'd respond properly. He was respectful and forgettable. One day I told him, stop asking about what she does. Ask about how she feels about what she does. Next conversation, he tried this. She told him she worked in marketing. Old version of him would say, oh, cool. How long have you been doing that? Instead, he said, what part of marketing do you secretly love? But most people would never guess. She stopped, smiled, and said, honestly, I love analyzing human behavior, figuring out why people click on things. The conversation shifted. Now they weren't talking about job titles. They were talking about psychology, influence, curiosity. At the end of the night, she said something interesting. I don't know why, but talking to you feels different. That's the power of emotional direction. Here's how you know you're doing it right. When she pauses before answering, you're hitting depth. When her answers get longer, you're building comfort. When she asks you the same type of question back, attraction is forming. Because now it's not an interview, it's exploration. And here's the insight you need to tattoo into your brain. People remember how they felt. They do not remember the data. She won't remember that you asked where she's from. She will remember that she felt understood. So next time you're in a conversation, try this simple shift. Instead of asking for facts, ask for perspective. Instead of asking what happened, ask how it changed her. That's how small talk starts melting into something warmer. But this alone isn't enough, because connection without tension becomes comfort, and comfort without tension becomes friendship. So now let's talk about the second principle, the one that creates spark. We'll go there in part 2. Now we move into the part most men are afraid of, because connection alone is safe. But attraction requires a little heat. If principle 1 builds emotional closeness, principle 2 creates spark, and spark comes from tension. Principle 2, playful tension, light friction creates fire. Here's a hard truth. If you agree with everything she says, you disappear. There's no polarity, no contrast, no electricity. Think about static energy. It doesn't build when two identical surfaces slide together. It builds from difference. Most men are so afraid of losing her that they over-agree. She says, I love astrology. He says, oh yeah, that's cool. She says, I only drink iced coffee. Well, he says, same. She says, I hate horror movies. He says, yeah, me too. And slowly, attraction flatlines, because nothing challenges her nervous system. There's a psychological phenomenon called arousal misattribution. When someone feels a slight increase in heart rate, from excitement, challenge, suspense, the brain can interpret that sensation as attraction. This doesn't mean you create drama. It means you create playful friction. Let me show you the difference. She says, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. Safe response, oh nice, those are interesting. Playful response. Okay, so you're either deeply fascinated by psychology or secretly planning the perfect crime. Which one is it? Now what happens? She laughs, she defends herself, she plays back. The energy shifts, the conversation becomes interactive. It's no longer question answer, it's a game. And games create engagement. Here's another example. She says, I'm very competitive. Most men say, oh, wow, that's cool. Instead, try. Competitive how? Like friendly board game competitive me, or I will destroy you and smile while doing it competitive. You're not insulting her, you're exaggerating contrast, you're inviting her into a playful identity. And here's what's powerful about this. When she starts defending herself in a fun way, she is investing. Investment builds attachment. But there's a rule here. This is not negging. You never attack insecurities. You never lower her value. You're teasing the surface, not the core. It's warmth wrapped in edge. Think of it like this. Curiosity opens the door. Playful tension turns on the lights. Let me tell you something most guys don't realize. Women are constantly evaluated by men, complimented, chased, validated. When you lightly challenge her worldview in a fun way, you step out of the crowd. You become the one who isn't trying to win approval. And ironically, that's attractive. Now watch for these signals. She laughs and leans in. She teases you back. She exaggerates her personality in response. That's not random. That's emotional engagement. And here's the key. Pull, then release. Tease, then smile. Challenge, then soften. Attraction is rhythm. Too much tension, it feels aggressive. Too little, it feels boring. You're dancing between the two. But there's a third principle that separates surface level flirting from something unforgettable. Because even playful tension can stay shallow. And shallow never becomes magnetic. Principle 3. Depth over distraction. Create moments, not noise. Most conversations are filler. Think about it. Weather, traffic, work complaints, weekend plans, it's verbal background music. Flirting, real flirting, happens in moments. Moments feel slower, heavier, charged. It's when she says something real. And instead of skipping past it, you stay there. For example, you ask her, what's something about you that most people misunderstand? Now she has a choice. She can give a light answer, or she can go deeper. If she says, people think I'm confident, but I overthink everything. Most men panic and change topic. You don't. You say, overthink in what way? Like replaying conversations or planning 5 futures at once. Now she feels seen. Specificity signals attention, and attention builds intimacy. Here are 3 powerful depth questions you can use. What risk have you taken recently that scared you a little? What's something your younger self believed that you completely disagree with now? What kind of person do you feel safest being? Notice something. These questions aren't heavy. They're open. They invite reflection without pressure. And when she answers slower, when her tone softens, when eye contact lingers just a second longer, that's your signal. You've moved from surface to emotional. And here's the biology behind it. When someone shares something vulnerable, oxytocin increases. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. Bonding creates closeness. Closeness creates trust. Trust amplifies attraction, but only if you don't break the moment. Silence is powerful here. Let pauses breathe. Let her words land. Don't rush to the next joke. Because 90% of men fill silence out of discomfort. The 10% who hold it, they feel grounded. And grounded energy feels safe. Let me give you a real example. A client once told me, he asked a woman, what's something you're proud of that you don't talk about much? She hesitated, then said, I put myself through college alone. He didn't immediately compliment her. He just looked at her and said softly, that explains a lot. She asked, what do you mean? He replied, you seem independent, but not in a loud way, more like you've carried things quietly. She stared at him and later told him, no one's ever said something like that to me. That wasn't a pickup line, that was presence. Depth isn't about intensity, it's about staying. So now you have curiosity to open her emotionally, playful tension to spark her nervous system, depth to anchor the connection. But here's the twist most men never expect, and it changes everything. We'll break that open in part 3. Now here's the twist, the part most men never see coming. Flirting is not about becoming more interesting. It's about making her feel interesting when she's with you. Let that sink in. You don't need to be the funniest man in the room. You don't need the craziest stories. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You need to create emotional space where she experiences herself more deeply. That's the shift. Most men perform. They try to impress. They stack stories, achievements, experiences, and while they're busy trying to be seen, they forget to see her. The man who wins isn't louder. He's more attuned. He asks questions other men are too afraid to ask. And when she answers, he listens like it matters. Because it does. Here's what's happening underneath everything we discussed. When you ask about internal experience, she feels understood. When you create playful tension, she feels stimulated. When you go deeper and hold the moment, she feels safe. Understanding plus stimulation plus safety. That combination is rare, and rare feels magnetic. Now, let me tell you something important. There's a difference between comfort and attraction. Safe conversation creates comfort. Emotionally charged conversation creates attraction. Comfort alone makes you the nice guy she calls when she's bored. Emotion, layered correctly, makes you unforgettable. So how do you actually apply this in real life without overthinking every word? Let me give you a simple, usable framework. 4 steps. You can use this tonight. Step 1. Start normal. Yes, normal. You don't need to open with depth or teasing. Hey, how do you know the host? What's your drink of choice? What pulled you here tonight? Warm up the interaction. Step 2. Shift to internal experience. She says she's in design. You say, what do you love most about creating something from nothing? She says she just moved cities. You say, what surprised you most about starting over? This is where emotional movement begins. Step 3. Add playful challenge. She says she loves traveling. You say, okay, but are you the spontaneous explorer type or the color-coded itinerary mastermind? She says she's calm under pressure. You say, that sounds suspiciously like someone who's hiding a chaotic alter ego. Smile when you say it. Energy matters more than words. Step 4. When she opens up, stay there. If she shares something real, slow down. Ask one layer deeper. What made that hard for you? How did that change you? What did you learn about yourself from that? But this is where connection solidifies. And here's what most men mess up. They get a vulnerable answer and immediately jump topics. Don't. Moments are rare. Stay in them. Now let me ask you something directly. Where do you usually fail? Are you too safe? Asking polite, logical questions that never create emotion? Or are you too agreeable, nodding along, afraid to create friction? Or maybe you rush past depth because silence makes you uncomfortable. Be honest with yourself. Self-awareness is attractive too, because here's the final truth. Attraction isn't built in lines, it's built in emotional transitions. Surface to depth, agreement to playful contrast, noise to presence. And when you master those transitions, something subtle happens. She starts leaning in. Her tone softens. She mirrors your energy. She asks you deeper questions back. That's when you know the shift has happened. Small talk has turned into flirting, not because you forced it, but because you guided it. Now, I want you to try something. Next time you talk to a woman, use just one internal question, just one playful challenge. And when she gives you something real, don't rush. Hold eye contact 1 second longer than usual. Let the silence breathe. Then tell me what happens. Drop a comment below. Which question are you going to try first? Are you more naturally curious or more playful? And if you want more content on female psychology, attraction dynamics, and how to create real emotional pull instead of surface level chatter, hit like. Share this with the guy who keeps saying, I don't know what to say, and subscribe if you're serious about becoming the man she remembers long after the conversation ends. Because the goal was never to talk more. The goal was to make her feel more, and now you know how.